Okay, Be'ezras Hashem, we are starting Daf Pei Hey Amud Beis Amud Sheni, and today's Daf is Pei Vav. So let's see, where are we? We have 3 lines from the bottom. Okay, we have 3 lines from the bottom, and hold on a second. Okay, so here we are. We learned in our Mishnah Hachaloinus v'Oivei Hachoima, that our Mishnah said that the windows of the Azara and the thickness of the walls are kalifnim, are like the inside of the Azara. That means that if you have a carbon chatas, a kohen has a carbon chatas, he could eat it on top of the wall in the Azara, or he could eat it within the windowsill. I mean, in other words, it doesn't get puzzle if you put the little chatas on the windowsill, because it's considered as if it's inside the Beis HaMikdash. The Gemara begins. Amar Rav. Rav said, Gagid va'aliyas lo niskachu. Amazing Gemara. Rav said like this. You know, you eat kachim kalim, like shlomims and Pesach, all around Jerusalem, right? But you have to know that you cannot eat it on the roof of the building that you are, or even on the second floor, because they have no kedusha Yerushalayim. So, for example, if someone is staying in the Mamila Hotel and he has this nice carbon Pesach, he cannot go to the roof deck and start eating the carbon Pesach, because there's no Kedushas Yerushalayim up there. And also, not only that, but even on the second floor, it has no Kedusha. That not only applies in Yerushalayim, but it also applies in the Beis HaMikdash as well. There was these roofs, there was these rooms and side buildings that had roofs within the Beis HaMikdash proper, and Kahanim were not allowed to eat their carbon chatas on the roof or on the second floor of something in the Beis HaMikdash, because again, it doesn't have kedusha. Only the ground floor has kedusha. So the Gemara says, "Ini, this is not so." Rav said in the name of Rab Chia, Kazesa Pischa. Kazesa Pischa means that sometimes the groups were so big that you only got a kazayas in your carbon Pesach. They were great. He's describing how it was in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, that they would have a kazayas of Pesach, because the groups were so large that they only the people in part of that group only got a kazayas. But here's the more important point: Bahalela poka igra. But when they said the Hallel, they almost cracked the roof. So for what this implies is that they ate their carbon Pesach on the roof, and there were so many people, and they said Hallel with such fervor that it broke the roof. So the Gemara says, "My love, doesn't this price mean here we pay Vav Ma'alef? The Achli be'igru, Amri be'igru. They ate the carbon Pesach on the roof, and they actually said Hallel on the roof. So that's you just told me that the roof has no kedusha. You can't eat your carbon Pesach on the roof. And the Gemara, loy, not so. The Achli ba'ara, they ate it on the ground floor. V'amru, but they went up to the roof be'igra they went up to the roof to say a Hallel. It's brought in the art scroll from a Dvar Shmuel that what the Gemara just said, that they used to eat the carbon Pesach on the ground floor and then go to the roof to say Hallel. That's why after we benz and finish the Seder, we open the door. We do it because of Eliyahu HaNavi. But he says that it could be the remez was that they used to finish or say the part of Hallel up on the roof. So therefore, that's why we open the door at night of your Seder. So the Gemara now asks a question: how are you allowed to finish your Seder and say the Hallel on the roof? Eini, but now we learned in the Mishnah, Ein maftirin acha Pesach. You're not allowed to depart after eating the carbon Pesach. Afi koiman, by saying, let's move our vessels, our kitchenware. Let's go eat it somewhere else. You know, like you finish your Shabbos meal and you want to go somewhere else to eat to go for a Shalom Zachar somewhere else. In the carbon Pesach, after you finish your carbon Pesach, you are not allowed to go visit your friend. Why? Because you might eat from his carbon Pesach, and you're not allowed to partake in his carbon Pesach. So that's why Ein maftirin achra Pesach. You don't do, after you finish your Pesach, you don't say, let's go somewhere else. So how were they allowed to go somewhere else? Means after they finish their Korban Pesach, go to the roof and say Hallel. But the Rav explains, the point is that we don't want you to go from one group to another group. So how do they go to the roof? So the Gemara says, Loikashi, it's not difficult. If you're in the middle of eating and you just didn't bench yet, then you can't go to your friend's Seder. Abakan, Shaloi, B'Shas Achila. If you finished eating and you benched already, so to say the Hal on the roof, that's not a problem. And that's what they did. But it's amazing. I like this, what the Gemara says, that when they said the Hal on the roof, it was said so with such fervor that Poka Igra, the roof literally split and cracked. That's the kind of fervor they had by the saying of the Hal. Something we need a chizuk on, because lots of times we go, even in tefillah, we go in, get it done, get in, get it done, get out. And there they said it with such a slahavas. It's a good musar. Tashema, come in here. Abba Shaul said, Aliyah's base Kodesh Kadoshim, the second floor of the Kodesh Kadoshim. That means that the Kodesh Kadoshim, where the Aron was, there was a second floor on top of it. Chamura is much more stricter mi base Kodesh Kadoshim. From the Kodesh Kadoshim, where the Aron itself, so to speak, was, the top floor, the second floor on top of that, had more strictness to it. Why? Shabes Kodesh Kadoshim, the Kodesh Kadoshim, Kohen Gadol next to Pamachas B'Shana. One time a year, the Kohen Gadol would visit the Kodesh Kadoshim on Yom Kippur, as you know, 4 times. V'aliyah base Kodesh Kadoshim, but to go onto that second floor above the second of the Kodesh Kadoshim, ein nichnasu law, they would not go into that second floor. Ela Pamachas B'Shavua. One time. This means one time in 7 years. Va'amri law pamayim b'shavua, twice in 7 years. Va'amri law, other says pamachas b'yovel. They only went to that second floor one time in 50 years. Why? Because that was the way they used to access. I think we pointed this out once before in our learning, that when they accessed to fix the walls of the Kodesh Kadoshim, they would come through it from the roof, from the ceiling of the Kodesh Kadoshim. They would lower a repairman to fix the walls of the Kodesh Kadoshim. So they would lower him once in 7 years, or some say once in 50 years, lay the mahitzricha to know what's needed in the Kodesh Kadoshim. So what do we see from there? That there is a kedusha on the second floor of the aliyah of the base Kodesh Kadoshim, that you were not allowed to walk into that second floor only one time in 50 years. And how do you just tell me that the second floors did not have any kedusha? But Rabbi Yosef, that's the main sanctuary. From the main sanctuary, right? That T building. You're going to come and ask a question. Certainly, that had a kedusha to it. I'll grant you that. That second floor had a kedusha. But the other little buildings inside of the Azara, that second floor did not have a building. What's different? Shani Heichel, the main sanctuary, is different. David gave over the blueprints to Shlomo his son on how to build the Beis Hamikdash. In the blueprints that David gave over to Shlomo before he passed on and how to build the Beis Hamikdash, he told him you got to build certain second floors. And who gave David the instructions? It came from God. It was God inspired to David HaMelech to give over the blueprints to build this temple to Shlomo. So that, I'll grant you, that second floor had kedusha to it. But the other second floors on other parts of the building did not have kedusha in it, and you're not allowed to eat your kedusha. You're not allowed to eat your korban chatas. A kohen wasn't allowed to eat the korban chatas around on the second floors of those buildings. Tashema, come in here. Ha lishkois, the big building, right? Ha benuyis b'kodesh upsuchais lechoya, that were built. It went into the Beis Hamikdash, but the opening was to the Harabayas. Take a look at this picture. Take a look at this piece. This was like a side building. Like I told you, here's the main temple, the Beis Hamikdash, the Heichel. But on the side, they had these little buildings. So this building over here, the office itself was built inside the Beis Hamikdash, but to access it, this is Harabayas. You had to go through Harabayas to get it. So what's the din with the inside And what's the deal with the roof? So the Brisa says that if it's toichen choil, the inside has a din of harabayis. Even though it takes up space on the base of Migdash, the inside has a din of harabayis. The gagasei and kodesh, but the roof of that building is holy, and it's an open kash and rav. It seems that you could eat your korban chatas on top of that. Here come Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda answered, "B'shagagasei and shovin karka azara." It's not every roof. When are roofs holy? If the roof is equal to the ground of the Azara. In other words, it's an underground office. It's an underground building, and the roof is the floor of the Azara of the temple. Take a look at this picture. Take a look. This is the Sha'ar Nikra, but you have these right over here, and over here you have another office space. There's a tunnel underneath. But the roof is this. The roof is already the Azara, because you had to go steps to go into the Ezras Yisrael. So that, since the roof is already the floor base there, of course, that roof has Kedusha to it, because it's actually the floor of Ezras Yisrael or Ezras Kahanim. That's why. That's the Gemara's teretz. If that's your answer, let's take a look at the end of the Brisa. If you have a building that is built inside on Harabayis, most of the building occupies Harabayis, but the opening to access that building, you have to go through the Azara, the Beis Hamikdash itself. So then, Toichen Kodesh, the inside of that building has a din like the Beis Hamikdash, v'gagasei and choil, and the roof has a din like Harabayis, because most of the building is on Harabayis. Now, if you want to say that the Bryce is talking about these underground tunnel, right? These type of places, these type of offices that are underneath the ground, and shovin the karka azara, when the roof is level with the floor of the azara, haviyala mechilas, then it's an underground tunnel, okay? And if it's underground, if you have a tunnel underneath the azara, underneath the Beis Hamikdash, doesn't have kedusha. The underground tunnels had no kedusha to it. So how could you say that the toichen of these things, which were underground tunnels, because that's what we're learning, have a din of kedusha? Rabbi Yochanan said underground tunnels have no kedusha to it. Answers the Gemara, Ki kama Rabbi Yochanan, when the Rabbi Yochanan said besuchas laharabayis, then when the Rabbi Yochanan say that the underground tunnels have no kedusha, if the only way to access the tunnel is the entrance is only on Harabayis, on the mountain. But in the if there's no access in the Beis Hamikdash, it has no kedusha. When did that Brisa say that the tunnel has kedusha to it? Is bepsuchos la'azara. There's an access entry point in the Azara. Perhaps there's a place of steps where you went down to access the underground office or the underground tunnel there. That, since the access point is in the Azara, that's why underneath it has a kedusha. Well, Tanya says the Gemara asks a question on that. Rabbi Yehuda said mechilos mitachas heichal choya. The mechilos, the tunnels that were underneath the temple itself, the main sanctuary, were choil, were din of non-kedusha. So take a look at this picture. Let's take a look at this picture over here. Here. I'm sorry. Let me just get it up here. This is no. Oh, I'm sorry. Here it is. I'm sorry. It's this picture. That's what I meant. This picture, the Gemara says that you just told me tunnels have no kedusha to it. Only if the entrance is in the Azar, if there's an entrance to get into the tunnel in the Beis Hamikdash, then it has kedusha. But we learned that there was a tunnel underneath this main sanctuary, and it has no kedusha to it. Presumably, the entrance to the tunnel was somewhere here, right? And therefore, so how could you say it has no kedusha to it? You told me if the entrance to the tunnel is in the Beis Hamikdash, it should have kedusha. So the Gemara says, no. What we're talking about is the tunnel was located over here at the end, and the entrance was to Harabayis. The entrance to get into the tunnel was Harabayis. That's why it has no kedusha to it. And for the Gemara, it was open to the Beis Hamikdash, to the Harabayas, and that's why it has no kedusha. Rashi says, behind where the Oren was, behind the Beis HaKaparis, there were tunnels that went 11 amas. There was 11 amma space that went to the back of the Beis Hamikdash, and the entrance was on Harabayas. So therefore, that's why it had no kedusha to it. It's interesting. On Sukkot's time, I think there's a group of people that go the first day of Sukkot to shake their lulav somewhere behind over here on Harabayas, or somewhere near here, which is directly behind where the Oren is. I don't know. I don't remember what shul it is. I think it's some old city shul, the Grod shul. I don't know. Anyway, that's what we're talking about. Tashema, come in here. V'gagoy kodesh, that the roof is kodesh. Oh, the brisa says the roof is kodesh. It's the end of that brisa. The roof of the heichal, the roof of the main sanctuary is kodesh. But you told me the roofs have no kodesh. The Tizbra, does that make sense? That brisa of Oktani Gagin Alolu Ein Oichlin Shem Kachim Kachim V'Shechlim Shem Kachim Kalam. Those roofs that on top of the sanctuary, you can't eat their kachim kachim, and you don't shech their kachim kalam. So the brisa seems to contradict itself. Velakasha, it's difficult. What does it mean, Gagai Kodesh, that the sanctuary had kedusha to it, the roof had kedusha to it? Not that you could eat kachim on that roof. The Gemara is going to say it has a different type of kedusha that you could put your tools there. That's what it means. It has a kedusha that you put some tools there. Amar Rav Chami Bar Guria, or Rav Chami Bar Guria said, L'oisen beis amos. They would put the two measuring rods, the amma measuring rods. There was an amma like a yardstick or whatever. There were two types of them. The Tanan we learned in the Mishnah. Beis amos hoya b'shushan abira. There was a place on the eastern wall that looked like this. Here it is. Let me just get it out. Here's the eastern wall. And on top of it was called the Shushan Habira entrance. Why was it called Shushan Habira? Because they had a picture of Shushan Habira on it, because I think because the Persians gave the right to build the second Beis Hamikdash. So as a thank you, they made one of the designs of the room on top of the entranceway called to look like Shushan Habira, to look like the city of Shushan Habira. So they would put on two sides of it two measuring rods, right over here and right over here, two measuring sticks over there. Now, why did they store sticks over there? These are sticks that measure how big an amma is. An amma, according to Moshe Rabbeinu's calculation, was 24 tefachim. That's what it is, because every amma has every tefach has 6 etzbos, 6 fingers, and therefore an amma which had 6 tvachim had 24 etzbos, 24 fingers. Okay, to make an amma you need 24 fingers. Now these were a little bit longer sticks. Now you'll see why. 2 measuring sticks hoya b'shushan habira was in Shushan Habira, on the room Shushan Habira. Achas al kerem mizrachis tzvaynis, v'achas al kerem mizrachis roibis. Both on one on the northeastern corner, one on the southeastern corner of that room. It was larger than the Amma yardstick of Moshe Rabbeinu, a half a etzba. It was a bigger yardstick by a half a finger. One was bigger than a half a etzba. Now, why would you have a yardstick in the Beis Hamikdash that's bigger? It says Amma on it, but you should know it's a little bit bigger. One was bigger by a finger, and one was bigger by a half a finger. Because why would they have a big yardstick and one was a smaller yardstick? Means one was bigger by an etzba, one was bigger by a half an etzba. The answer is they had construction people, and the construction people, let's say if they promised to build an amma worth of space, so then they would measure out the amma. They had to measure out the amma according to the price, what Moshe Rabbeinu's stick is. But what they actually produced was a bigger stick. They put a little bit, they didn't do it tzimtzum exactly. They actually gave extra work. In other words, they increased what they were supposed to do by an etzba. And that was that measuring. So that they would not come to Me'ilah, because if you only measured with Moshe Rabbeinu's stick, maybe they'll come up short a little bit what they were supposed to do, and they're going to be moil behegdish. Hegdish paid them for an alma, they're giving less. So that's why when they measured out how much they did, they actually measured out, they tried to do more than what they were supposed to do, so that they wouldn't come to moil in hegdish paying them for work that was not done. The tarte lomanly, why did you need two sticks? Achas the kaspa v'dahava achas binyano. When they were measuring out things that they had to do in silver and gold, they only made the excess stick by half an etzba, because it's expensive to add more silver and gold. So the workers would measure it out with the stick that was only a half an etzba, a half a finger bigger than the ones that Moshe Rabbeinu. But for regular carpentry and regular construction people, which they used the larger stick that was bigger than Moshe Rabbeinu by a finger. Again, the whole idea was that anybody working for the Beis Hamikdash had to be so careful not to undercut the what he's being paid for. In fact, he should do more than what he is being paid for, and that's how we measured it with these miscounted for, misnumbered sticks. Now we learned in the Mishnah, we said that the windows of the Beis Hamikdash and the thickness of the wall has a din like the Beis Hamikdash itself. So what do you mean? But if it's above ground, I can understand how the window sill itself has a din like the Beis Hamikdash, that there was a window that was mamish on level with the wall of the Azara. There you have it, because it's on the floor of the Azara, the Beis Hamikdash, and there was a window there on the ground that made that place holy. The thickness of the wall, a wall generally is very high up. How is that possible? And for the Gemara, bashura, with a small wall. The ksiv, there was actually two walls, a large wall and a small wall. Let's just see the picture, because this is the picture. By the way, I'm using the picture from the Pirish Chai. The Pirish Chai, it's not so known, but he also wrote a little picture book on Pesachim. And I don't think any of the other places have a picture book. Anyway, the Azora, as you know, the Beis Hamikdash is a mountain, right? So you have to go up steps. So let's say this is the Beis Hamikdash in the Azora, and you're dealing with the back wall over here. This top of this small wall, this rampart, is called the Bar Shura, a small wall, which is actually level to the karka of the Azara. This is the one that has kedusha. The top of this wall has kedusha, not the top of this wall. This wall goes way up in the up there on top of the Beis Hamikdash. This is exactly the floor of the Beis Hamikdash, but it's called the top of a wall because when you're going up, when you're at the bottom step, there's a small wall over here. And how do you know there was a small wall? Because it says in Eicha, Vayavel, it was in morning, Chel v'choyma, the small wall and the large wall. Shura ubar shura. There was a small wall, there was a big wall, and a small wall. And what we are referring to in our discussion is the small one. Zok the Mishnah, Shtei chaburas haya oichlem b'bas acher. Now we're talking about eating the Korban Pesach. You had two groups that could eat in one house. Let's say you have a Korban Pesach, a big, large family, and they're eating one Korban Pesach. They can divide up into two groups. They could eat in two different tables. Let's say they're saying different Devar Torahs on one table, so you can divide them up. But the Mishnah says that once you divide something up, they're not allowed to rejoin together, even though they're eating one Korban Pesach. They're eating one Korban Pesach. Half the family went to one table, half the family went to another table in the dining hall. They're not allowed to rejoin together. And we'll see that in the Gemara. These turn their heads and eat in their direction. And they eat on the other table, and they don't mix once they decided to divide. And they can have the hot water urn right in the middle between the two tables. Now, the shamash, the waiter, he belongs to one group. So when he serves the other group, he has to make his face looking like he doesn't belong there. That he has to turn his face. When the waiter would stand to pour water to the second group, and he belongs to the first group table, first he has to make sure his mouth is closed, okay? And he turns his face away. I don't know how, he probably can see where he's pouring, and then he turns his face away until he gets back to his original group, to his original table, and then eat. The kala, a kala, let's say a regular table. They're eating all on one table, and there's a young bride that just got married. So this is a new thing. A young bride that just got married, and she's ashamed because everybody's eyeing her. So even though she's in that one group, right? So she's permitted to turn her head away and eat like by herself, so to speak, because she they gave a, she's permitted. It's not like she's separating out into a different group. She's just shy a little bit. Now, Masnisa money. Who is our Mishnah going according to? Like I said, our Mishnah says you got to start off with one carbon Pesach. You break off into two groups, but you cannot rejoin. That's the point. You cannot rejoin. Rabbi Yehuda Oima, the time we learned to the Brisa, the Torah says you eat the carbon Pesach in two groups. Yoichlu is plural. One carbon Pesach in two groups. You eat the carbon Pesach in two groups. Now, but maybe I would think that you're allowed to eat it in two different places. That means that once you broke off into two different groups, you could rejoin. That means you started eating in one place. You could walk over to eat your carbon Pesach, finish it in another place. No. Talmud, you have to eat it in one place. That's it. You can't eat it in two different places. So you can eat it with your group, but you can't walk around, so to speak, and eat your carbon Pesach. It has to stay. You have to sit and eat your place. The waiter that ate his kazayas and he was sitting by the oven, so that was his place. So therefore, he should finish eating. If he's a Talmud, somewhat intelligent, he fills up and finishes eating his carbon Pesach, and then he can walk around. If his friends want to do with him a favor, they sit next to him because he can't move. Once he started eating his carbon Pesach at the Tanner place, he can't move around eating carbon Pesach. They were Rabbi Yehuda. My mother always said, don't walk and eat. You got to eat in one place. So they learned that from the carbon Pesach. But Rab Shimon argues. Rab Shimon says, he holds you're allowed to walk around. You're allowed to eat the carbon Pesach with the drumstick walking around. You can eat the carbon Pesach in two places. Now, what is he going to do with Babayis Echad Ye'ochel? He's going to tell you, we go to Amid Beis, Pevav Beis, I might think that you can eat the carbon Pesach in two groups. That means one family could split up into two groups. You have to eat it in one group. You can eat it in one group. That means you have to eat it on one table, right? You can't separate it in two different. Even if you want carbon Pesach, you have to eat it on one group. But nevertheless, once you start eating your carbon Pesach, according to Reb Shimon, you can walk around. Says the Gemara, what are they arguing? Rabbi Yehuda Saiva, what's the source? The crux is Rabbi Yehuda holds yesh aim l'masoris. When you see a pasuk in Chumash, you look at how it is spelled, not how it is read, but how it's spelled. And therefore, the pasuk says, "Babayis echad ye'ochel." Rabbi Yehuda reads it as yoichal. One place, eat it. Yoichal means you should eat it. That's how Rabbi Yehuda learned the word. Rabbi Shimon looks and says, yesh aim lemikra. What you give credence to the way it is read. Look at the way it's read. Ye ochel. The carbon Pesach should be eaten in one group. So according to Reb Shimon, the carbon Pesach has to be eaten on one table, but you are permitted to walk around with it because Ye ochel is only implying regarding the carbon Pesach should be in one place. The carbon Pesach should be in one group, but you yourself could walk around. Rabbi Yehuda has learned that the word yoichel is read yoichal. You should eat it in one place. Once you start eating your carbon Pesach, according to Rabbi Yehuda, in one place, you can't walk around. Albeit, Rabbi Yehuda says, when you start eating the carbon Pesach, you could have one carbon Pesach break off into two families. And Rabbi Yehuda is the author of our Mishnah. Now the Mishnah asks a couple of questions. They were sitting, and the mechitza, and they spread a mechitza between them. Let's say one family was eating on one table, right? One family, they had one carbon pesach to eating, and all of a sudden, they put up a mechitza between them. Okay, there was one from person. He wanted to put like a woman's mechitza in between them. So now, now the Gemara says, according to Rabbi Yehuda, this is a problem that you could continue. Why? There's no problem with breaking up a carbon pesach into two different groups. You continue eating because who cares? They now turn into two different groups because there's a mechitza between them. Continue eating. According to Rabbi Shimon, a pesach cannot be eaten in two groups. Then they can't continue eating because you have two groups over here. Now, it's not considered, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, you're still considered as if you're eating in one place. Just because they put the mechitza there, you're still in your same chair that you were there, that you started. But the mechitza only put up the issue is that now you're breaking your union into two different groups. So therefore, that's no problem according to Rabbi Yehuda. According to Rabbi Shimon, that's a problem. Therefore, you can't continue. Says the Gemara. Let's say they started eating two different groups with a mechitza down the middle, right? And then the mechitza fell down. So according to Rabbi Shimon, you could eat in two different places. You could continue to eat because now you don't have the problem. It's not two groups anymore, but it's like a brand new place. Once they pull down a mechitza, your view is different. It's almost as if you're in another place. It's almost as if you're in another area from when you started, even though you're in the same seat. But once they take away the partition, now you can see further. It's as if you're in a new place. If you're in a new place, according to Shimon, that's not a problem. So therefore, he holds you can eat the carbon pesach in two different places. You don't have to eat in the same area that you started with. You can continue to eat. According to Rabbi Yehuda, who holds you can't eat in two different places, the fact that the mechitza came down, that's almost as if you're in a new place because your view changes. When your view changes, even though you're still in the same seat, it's as if you're eating in two different places. You can't continue to eat the carbon pesach. Says the Gemara, Yosef Rav Kahana Rav Kahana said these halachas as if they were simple, as if it's very clear cut. The din of the mechitza depends where it's if you're putting a mechitza or taking down a mechitza. Amalei Rav Kahana, Rav Ashi said to Rav Kahana, it's not so clear. You should really say it in a question. Silik mechitza, vasiyas mechitza, taking down a mechitza or making a mechitza, bihave kabei v'koibis or kabei chaburas tami. Is it as if you're in two different places or two different groups? It's not so clear. You're saying it as fact, but it's not so. I hold there's another side to it, and therefore you should ask it in a lashon of a question, and you should remain teku by a kasha. Next Gemara, hakala hechveches es panel. We learned in the Mishnah that although they're eating a carbon pesach, the whole family is eating together, and you just made a wedding, and there's a kala, a bride there, she could turn her face to the sun. And basically, what we're telling her, and according to the way Tosfos learns, is that she should turn her way to the side because everybody's looking at the collar. Why are the people looking at the collar? They want to see what type of jewelry the chassan brought her. So if she's shy, she could turn away her head, and that's not like eating in another place. So she could turn her head aside. My timer, because it's she has like a busha. She has like a busha over here. So therefore, we allowed her to turn her head to the side. Says the Gemara, Rav Huna bereid Rav Nosson ikle l'Rebbe Rav Nachman Yitzchak. Rav Huna was the son of Rav Nosson. He came to the house of Nachman Yitzchak. So remember this name. He calls himself Rav Huna. Amrle, they asked him, Ma shmecha, what is your name? Amalahu, so he said, my name is Rav Huna. So he's the house of Rav Nachman Yitzchak. I guess the people asked him, what's your name? And he said, my name is Rav Huna. Amru, they said, Nesid Mar Apuria. Nesid Mar Apuria, would you sit down and I guess sleep here, right? Apuria, would you sit down on the chair? So he said, yes. He didn't refuse. Yosef, he sat. Yavle Kasa, they gave him a cup to drink. Kable Bechad Zimna, he didn't even refuse. He took it right away. V'shasya betrays him, and he drank it in 2 gulps. So you get the story. They offered him a place to stay. He right away didn't refuse. They gave him something to drink. He accepted it right away and drank it in front of them in 2 sips. And he didn't even turn his face. Now, the idea is that if you're a humble person, you shouldn't eat in front of anyone. You eat in a private. You don't eat in a private place, especially if you're a person of humility or of Talmidei Chachamim stature. You don't eat in front of people, right? The rabbi doesn't go to the restaurant. So they asked him a question, Amalei. So they said to him, "My time Rav Huna." Well, first of all, why do you call yourself Rav Huna? Amalahu Bal Shemani. That is my name. In other words, it's a title that people always call me Rav Huna, and it's not Balgaiva to use that name. My time at Ki Amr Loch Nesiv Apuria Yosef. Why did they say when they said, "Here, have a chair and sit down"? Yosef, you sat right away. You didn't refuse a little bit. Go through the customary refusal. So Rav Huna answered, "Kol mash yebelcha balabayis asay." It's a rule. Anything that the balabayis says to you do, you should have to do. If the balabayis says sit down, you sit down to eat. Chutz, you don't have to listen to him when he says mitzay, get out. In other words, that's what it says in parentheses. And what it means to say is that you should get up and leave before he tells you to get out. You should have the sense to understand that the meal's over and don't overextend your stay. They say that fish and guests have one thing in common. If they stay out too long, they both don't smell right. So, and the balabais, whatever the balabais tells you to do. And therefore, Rav Huna said, I sat right away. So they asked him a question. If you're such a big rabbi, why, if they give you a cup, you accepted it right away? You should have, refused it a little bit. Like when they ask you to daven for the Yomid, you don't take it. You could refuse somebody smaller in stature than you, but I don't. You're not supposed to refuse somebody greater than you. And you, in the house of Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, they're all greater than me. I can't refuse. You give me a drink, I drink it. Okay. My time, you should just say, betrays him. Why did you drink it in 2 gulps? Maybe you should have drank it longer. In like 3 gulps, you drank it in like 2 shots. The time we learned in the Brisa, that's the way to do it. If you drink the cup they give you to drink in 1 shot, hareza gargan, that's like a guzzler. You're drinking it too fast. Shnaim, if you drink it in 2 sips, that's normal. Shloisha, but if you drink it too slow, it looks like you have a bloated ego. So that's fine. My tama, so that's interesting that he drank it in 2 shots. So my tama layahadrik apa. But the fact is, why do you drink in front of our face? Why did you not turn your face? You're not supposed to eat in front of somebody. Amalahu. So he says, no, the Indian of not eating in front of is only by a kala. Kala tanan. Our Mishnah only discusses a kala. She turns her face, and she, we give her the license or the okay to turn her face, not eat in front of people. But everybody else, there's not a problem. There's nothing wrong with eating in front of somebody else. That's not a sign of disrespect. Now, says the Gemara, this Gemara discusses the halacha of, one more thing about the drinking. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yossi, Ikla be Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yossi, Lakanya. Rabbi Shmuel was at that guest in the Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yossi, Ben Lakanya. Rabbi Shmuel was a guest. Yavle Kasla, they gave him a cup. They gave this Rabbi Shmuel a cup. Kable b'chad zimni, he accepted it right away. V'shasi b'chad zimni. He drank it in 1 shot. Now, we just learned before that you're supposed to drink the drink that they gave you. Probably these were alcoholic drinks. You're not supposed to drink it in 1 shot. You should drink it in 2 shots. So they tended like Savalama, didn't you? They asked Rabbi Shmuel, if you drink a cup, an alcoholic drink in 1 shot, you're a guzzler. That's not their cheretz. That's not the way to do things. So Rabbi Shmuel answered, like Amr, they did not say bekois kakatim. They didn't say this by a small, like a schnapps glazel. A whiskey glass, a small one, that you could drink it in 1 shot. And if it's sweet alcohol, it's not so problem. It's the sweet wine, it's not a problem. And I'm a big guy, so it's not a problem. So it's not considered a gargan. That's what he knew himself. Now, this Gemara is interesting. It talks about how to deal with the waiter. You have to show respect for a waiter. So you go to a restaurant, you can't expect the waiter, if the first guy shows up to the restaurant, that the waiter should serve the first guy. Then the second guy comes and he used to serve them. That's not respectful for the waiter. So Amar Rav Huna gave a halacha. B'nei Chabura, a group that's planning to eat together, they have to go in to start the meal. There have to be at least 3 people there. Then they could start the meal. And if others come later, that's okay. But to have one guy come and sit down and start his meal, and then the other guys show up, that's not fair for the waiter. But if 3 guys come in, and if 3 guys come in, then the waiter has to start serving. But if 1 guy shows up or 2, the waiter does not have to serve. That's what Rav Huna said. Amar Rabba give you another halacha of waiters. Who the oil, the male, who the oil, they went beidana at the time, the regili lemale, at the time that people go to eat. In other words, they're going at the normal supper hour. And the ragash behu the layam. The ragash behu the layam. What does that mean? One doesn't, they don't, in other words, they told them, okay, it means like this. They told the waiter that one of us is going to stay later than the others. So then it's not disrespectful for the waiter that you have one guy who's taking his time eating and the waiter has to stand around and wait till this last guy finishes. If they gave the waiter a warning that somebody is going to, that we leave one by one, whoever's finished eating leaves, then it's okay to do that to the waiter because he's expecting that. Amar Rav Ibrida says, you have to pay, you have to give a tip to the waiter. That's for sure. But Tzarech Achron, the guy who stays late, he has to give the biggest tip. He has to give more because he's causing the waiter to sit around and wait for him to finish eating, and the waiter can't go home until he's finished eating. So he has to give the biggest tip. The halacha is not like Ravina. Hadron Allah Ketzat Tzailim, and this is how we finish Ketzat Tzailim. Interesting. All right.
Okay, very good.
Okay, very good. All the best. Tomorrow night, well, tomorrow night I may not have the Gemara up. I'm going to be giving it a little bit from another location. I'm going to try to have my computer there. If not, I'll be just giving it with the Zoom B, but maybe not the actual Gemara going to be on the screen. But we don't need it.
Okay. We all have Gemaras.
Yes. Okay. Very good. Okay. Take care.
Okay. Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.